would actually like to invite our moderator and panel members to turn on their cameras and unmute their microphones so they can join. And yes, because now we will be talking and we will be discussing about the financial and economic sides of the green hydrogen opportunity in Africa. And for this, let me just share my screen very quickly with you. We have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Thomas Hillig, who is the managing director of TH Energy, which is a boutique consultancy based in Germany. Thomas is quite an experienced renewables professional, really covering many different aspects. He's worked with companies such as Alstom, Innotech Solar, and he leads TH Energy since 2013. Thanks to his amazing knowledge and experience, I'm also very happy to count him as a member of the board of AFSIA. And he's also, many of you may know him as a top global influencer on smart grids, renewables, hydrogen, and e-mobility. So really very happy to welcome Thomas as the moderator. And I will stop here, Thomas, and switch over to you for your panel discussion. I think Thomas is not with us. Let me check. There we go. Thomas, you are hiding among the attendees, but you are not connected. Can you turn on your mic and join us? There we go. Yes, just unmuting your mic and we're ready to go. Yes, Thomas, you are with us.
All right.
Yes,
yeah, I think
wonderful.
I asked you to kick me out yesterday when I was following the session and I was always in the panel. Probably this is why I was in the audience right now. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, John. I think you already said everything about me that the audience has to know. I'm just the moderator. Let's focus on the panelists. Some background information on the panel. Yesterday, we already got to know through impressive keynotes and also the panel discussion about technical background. In the previous keynote from Vincent, we got insights about green hydrogen production and hydrogen in general in Africa. In this panel, I want to focus basically how can companies earn money? So economical aspects of green hydrogen generation and also about hydrogen markets in Africa. Our first panelist is Elizabeth Minshew. She is Associate Operations Officer at the International Finance Corporation. And by the way, I've chosen here a little bit different way of introducing. I will shoot into the chat, if I manage to technically, the CV, the background information. So if you want to connect with the panelists, if you want to read about their background, please do this in LinkedIn. I ask the panelists not to go through their CV. So let's see how this works out. Elizabeth, welcome to the stage. If you could introduce yourself a little bit more in detail, 1 minute would be great, absolute maximum 2 minutes. Thank you very much, Elizabeth.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm calling in from the East Coast of the US. So this is a great way to start my day. As Thomas said, I work at IFC and I work within the climate business department. Our work is focused on increasing all of our climate business and our climate projects. So green hydrogen is obviously a very interesting technology for us as it bridges our infrastructure and manufacturing side of the business lines. And of course, our focus is exclusively emerging markets. So the potential in Africa is definitely something we need to learn more about.
Excellent. That was even below 1 minute. Highly appreciated. If you want to learn more about Elizabeth and her impressive CV, have a look at this LinkedIn link that I sent through. Ladies first again. So our second panelist is Jubilee Eso. Jubilee is a partner in the global energy group at Evershed Sutherland. So basically she is a lawyer. How to make money with green hydrogen or with something in general, I think lawyers always have the recipe to make money. So very delighted to have Jubilee on the panel.
Yes, Thomas, this is not Jubilee, this is John. Unfortunately, Jubilee is fighting a little bit with her internet. She's trying to connect and hopefully she will be connecting with us very, very soon.
So then it's not ladies first. Then it's Damien Ricardo, our next panelist. He founded, right now I have a crazy echo. Let me see how I can get rid of this. So Damien founded Finer Green, which basically is a specialized investment bank that is on the one hand side active in Africa, and on the other hand side also deals with green hydrogen. Damien, could you please give us some insights about your background?
Yes, thank you, Thomas. Nice to meet you. So on our side, yes, we are a financial advisory firm. Name is Finer Green. We have 8 offices throughout the world and 2 offices in Africa, one in Abidjan and one in Nairobi. We have 15 people working there. And what we are doing, it's we are financing a renewable energy project, by including hydrogen in Africa and in all the other continents.
Excellent. So with it 1 or 2 minutes, I can't even make it here to send through the link and copy it, but here we go. Certification, testing is also a very important topic, especially for me as a German. We have a track record in coming up with standards and norms. On this panel, we have someone who's not from Germany. We have Chakrada Brady. Please help me with the correct pronunciation of your name. Chakrada is Director for Renewables in UL for the Asia Pacific region and also for Sub-Sahara Africa. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you, Thomas, for having me here. I really appreciate that. You can call me Chuck. That's the easiest way to go forward.
I was hoping for that. Thank you very much, Chuck.
No worries. We at UL work with our customers mostly on the projects as well as on the product side of the portfolio. So on the project side, we work with the debt and also the private equity investors to see what are the nuances of the project, how we help reduce the input cost of hydrogen as part of the green hydrogen. And on the certification and testing side, we look at the solutions that are being proposed, and also in terms of installation and in storage, what are the requirements that needs to be addressed for the local markets is something that we are carefully looking at it. I think because it's a budding topic right now. We will be developing some standards and guidelines surrounding these topics. So I manage the operations from Asia Pacific, including Middle East and Africa. Thank you.
So do you make the life easy or complicated for people who want to invest in green hydrogen?
We want to make sure that its safety is the priority, and we need to ensure that safety is a priority with economic sense. I think that's the thinking process that we have. So we should not be compromising on the safety for sure.
Excellent. I just want to check if Jubilee is available right now. Do we have any news from her?
Not yet, but I will keep you posted.
Okay, so you will tell me as soon as she is available. My first question is, what do we need actually to attract investment to Africa? So I want to speak about green hydrogen production in Africa. We have some interesting projects or announcements lately. So basically Saudi Arabia was telling that they really want to come up with a huge green hydrogen infrastructure and export it all around the world. Then there is a similar approach with Hydeal. Thierry Leperc basically in his high deal consortium with many players, he announced that they will build 95 gigawatts of solar and 67 gigawatts of hydrogen capacity. And with scaling up very rapidly, they want to achieve a hydrogen price of 1.5 euros per kilogram. They want to do it, High Deal wants to do it actually in Southern Europe. So Damien, I think you are based in Madrid. Maybe you have the guys in front of your door. Why
yes.
are there no announcements for Africa? Why is it Saudi Arabia? Why is it Southern Europe? Where would you invest, Damien? At what kind of hydrogen projects are you looking at the moment?
Yes, thank you, Thomas. Alors, actually, we are currently the financial advisor of iDeal. So we are currently working every day with Thierry Lepere on that task. So we are helping them to raise the funds needed for building this project. So we are well placed to answer the question. So typically, as of today, you know that you have a big program in Europe to make hydrogen. And in that sense, and you have already an existing gas grid in Europe. So this is why, firstly, we will build some projects in Southern Europe where you have a lot of sun, and you have your gas grid that you can use for hydrogen. So Spain, Portugal, and mostly maybe Italy and Greece. But to start, Spain and Portugal. Then the idea of High Deal is also to look afterwards and to build direct pipeline for hydrogen. But it will take like 5 to 10 years to have those pipelines ready and in operation. And in this idea, the idea will be then to have, you remember maybe the Desertec initiative was the idea to build some solar project in Sahara, in Africa for Europe consumption. And you have the same idea as of today, just to build a pipeline of gas between Europe and Northern Africa, and where you can add a lot of solar and hydrogen capacity in those countries. So I would say at a big scale, Maghreb countries will be more the countries where you can have this kind of project. So this is the big scale market. Then apart from this big scale market, you have, I would say, small market, which name is electromobility, where we'll need some plants, because we are talking about plants between, when I say big scale, we are talking about plants between 100 to 500 megawatts. So it's very huge in terms of capacity. And then you could have, I would say, much lower plants for electromobility. So we are talking about 10 million euro capex, and to have hydrogen for buses, for trucks, and so on. And so it could be local plants that could be placed where you have the needs. So this, I would say, small hubs could be built then in many regions in Africa. And at the moment, just to give you the example of Europe, you have small hubs who are building in France, Germany, and so on. So you can have also that, because you are not selling the hydrogen at the same price. As you say, Thomas, and just to conclude my speech, you have, if you make a big scale, you need to sell the hydrogen at 1.5 euro per kilo. But if you do, I would say, small scale, and you sell directly to electromobility, you can sell your hydrogen to, I would say, 4 to 5 euro per kilo. But the market is smaller in terms of size for the moment. So you have two markets to address, and so two capacity for Africa to position themselves on it.
Excellent. There is another point which you have not really addressed, country risk. Elizabeth, at the IFC, I think you have a track record of enabling, let's say, sustainability efforts in countries that are considered as high risk. What do you do regarding green hydrogen? So the interesting thing with green hydrogen, also with solar, you hardly have any operational costs. So basically, you pay the bill for the fuel right now, or you have to finance it right now for generating fuel within the next 20, 25, 30, 35 years. So if I was asked, independent of solar irradiation, of wind speeds, where to build such infrastructure, I would most likely go into countries where I would say, okay, there is hardly any perceived risk. So if I'm a European, probably I would say, okay, let's go for wind in Germany. But if you then think of large scale production from areas like Africa, I think the perceived country risk plays really a big role. Elizabeth, what are your efforts at IFC regarding enabling green hydrogen infrastructure in regions like Africa?
So this is a very important question, and I'm going to answer it sort of wearing two hats. So while I am at IFC, we're working very closely with our colleagues at the World Bank at IBRD, specifically their SMAP program, which focuses on expanding all sorts of renewable energy across our client countries. So I think one of the most important first steps, at least for IFC, is to work with countries that have quite a specific or at least an existing hydrogen strategy. So I think we're seeing this come out of Europe. After big announcements, we're seeing actual country strategies come to fruition and then action plans. And this is what we want to see in our client countries and emerging markets as well. So specifically about what a strategy is, I mean, they need to incorporate existing infrastructure and supply chain capacities, also regional and local demand. So we've talked a lot about the potential for Northern Africa, for example, to be linked up with Southern Europe. And I think that that's something that people talk about quite often in terms of Africa green hydrogen. So looking at, how can we link up with existing gas pipeline infrastructure, for example. And then we at IFC, I think the way that we're thinking about it, we're most comfortable thinking about at least green hydrogen investments when we do make one, is one that is cross-sectoral and really incorporates a variety of off-takers and players, for example. So if we can work to create these hydrogen hubs or hydrogen valleys, as we hear so often in the news, that's better for us, because then we can improve the risk offtake and sort of diversify the project. So yeah, and I think also underlying all this, people have said a couple of times already, is just we need to have the renewable capacity. Whether it's already built out is obviously more ideal, but we're doing some analysis on offshore wind, for example. The technical potential is pretty immense across the region. So, at the same time as we think about green hydrogen, we think about solar. We've made a lot of progress there with our scaling solar program. So we're trying to take a similar approach with scaling wind. Then, we build this whole renewable ecosystem. We have good renewable energy prices, and it helps to reduce the risk of the green hydrogen production. So many factors.
Great. I think we have many solar installers or solar companies here in the audience. Can they contact you on LinkedIn and you will help them, or should they go to their government and say first, let's come up with a green hydrogen strategy? So are you the direct point of contact or not?
I'm not by any means our solar lead, but I work closely with all of our industry specialists. We have a great team of people doing solar energy, both at the World Bank and at IFC. So I think, work closely with local and national and regional governments to make sure that your solar energy strategies are aligned with net, carbon zero strategies, for example. So the country has, this is another good sign, is that if a country has a net zero goal, how are you going to meet it? Probably with renewable energy, probably with solar if you're in Africa. So it all loops together. So just making sure we plan ahead quite clearly, but I'm always happy to connect.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clear, that you are enabling actually the shift towards green hydrogen, and probably you're not the best contact for the next steps for someone who thinks who might build a smaller decentralized solar power plant for green hydrogen generation.
We do work, so a lot of the work that we do is on decentralized energy. So that's something interesting too that we've considered as the mini grid applications for green hydrogen production. So don't exclude anything.
Excellent. Elizabeth, there are economical risk factors and there are technology factors. What are your main technology concerns? I want to make the shift towards Jack to include him regarding certification. What are your biggest doubts regarding green hydrogen generation, transportation, storage from a technology point of view?
I mean, I think we, at least in our client countries and emerging markets, will benefit quite a bit in the next 5 to 10 years from a lot of the technology improvements that will be used to meet Europe's goals, for example. So, I mean, I think for us, we do consider technology risks, of course, but it's only one piece of the whole puzzle. So if the technology risk is high, but everything else sort of evens out, and we have a good arrangement of fellow financiers or additional off-takers, for example, I think it's more tolerable. But we're also very open and interested in actively communicating with electrolyzer producers themselves, for example. So an investment in the company would be something we could consider. We also have a venture capital department, so we're actively looking at VC opportunities as well. And I think green hydrogen is one that we're going to see quite a few in the coming years.
Jack, technology risk we all know hydrogen is explosive. Many start the discussion at this point. If we go a little bit further into the details, probably we'll see that hydrogen is not as bad. What kind of hydrogen certifications do you offer? If I, for example, want to build a solar power plant linked to an electrolyzer for green hydrogen generation today, is there anything I have to consider from a certification point of view?
I think thanks, Thomas, for having me here, and a great question. So I'll just break down the question into two things. First is economical sense, the next is the safety aspect and certification. I think what Elizabeth pointed out is very, very important. I think what we have, the capability within UL, is the fact that I can take offshore wind, onshore wind, energy storage, solar, and look at what exactly are the requirements for your input generation cost for your production of hydrogen, because that's the significant aspect of the cost. So you're looking from the capex of the electrolyzer cost and as well as the input electricity cost that you need for that. So we can look at the whole prism of that and explain where can we land. So the first aspect is which are the countries that have got a potential to supply 24/7 power for these electrolyzers, and what is the basis of that. To your question regarding the certification, yes, we can look at these ecosystems. The fact that what does it mean to have 24/7 microgrids running on its own, how are we going to go about it is going to be the second question. The third question is the electrolyzer itself, right? I mean, a lot of new technologies are coming here, and there will be a lot more technologies that will be there in the next couple of years. So let me give you a context. What we feel at least is what was solar in 2008 is where probably green hydrogen is right now. So it will take a couple of years before new technologies will come through. The next aspect is the landed cost, which means the production of hydrogen, the storage, the transportation. So there'll be a lot of new areas of thinking, new guidelines, new testing requirements, and how to ensure that it can be safely transported. We believe that the first phase will be on the industrial side of the business, where the scaling will happen, not on the mobility side. At least that's what we see. Right now, currently, I think what we are focusing with our customers is to look at what is the lowest cost of energy they need, so that it makes business sense for them to produce hydrogen at each and every country. So we have that mapped out. So we are working with the governments of Australia, we're working with the governments in India, as well as in the US. So we are educating that, and we have a tool that we have developed. People can download the tool, start inputting these parameters, and look at where their cost structure looks like from the generation point of view for sustainable energy.
Okay, does this also include transportation to Europe, for example, or around the world? Is this something you are covering from the cost perspective or in this overall picture?
Not yet. We are only looking at the front side of the hydrogen. We are not looking at the back end of it. So the back end of this is something that we are working on it, but that comes over a period of time of understanding too many factors and too many parameters at this point of time. The other thing that we need to also understand I think something that we are seeing unique in the market when we are talking to some of the investors is who's the off-taker. I mean, you have this like PPAs for electricity market. Is there some off-taker agreements for the kind of production that you have? What are the off-taker agreements look like? How long they look like? Because it needs to make sense from the financing community that whether the payoff is 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years. I think that is also a very crucial question to look at it from the whole perspective of the cost of energy at the end of the day.
Excellent. Damien, Chuck made a good point. Green hydrogen is today where solar was in 2008. So in 2008, basically, we went away that there were feed-in tariffs in Europe, there were tax incentives in the US. It was a pretty expensive thing for taxpayers or electricity consumers around the world to initiate cost degression for solar. The ideal approach is a different one. Basically, organize enough investment and build up the capacity right now so that costs come down immediately without this transition phase where basically the taxpayers have to finance the cost degression. Is this something which will be completely done from Europe, or do you see that this initial phase could also happen in Africa? So would in the end then international taxpayers finance this kickoff in Africa? Would you say that this is realistic? You already made some, gave some points in your previous contribution.
Yeah, but on that, you know, the governments will not pay as much as they did for the beginning of renewables. So meaning you will not have any feed-in tariff for hydrogen. This is the idea. As of today, you know, just to take the example of Europe, it's true that the Western European countries put a lot of money on the table to subsidize renewable energy. But now for hydrogen, the question is not the same. They are not thinking about putting in place a feed-in tariff as they did for renewable energy. They are thinking to maybe to start to help by giving some kind of subsidies, capex subsidies on the project. So for the project, the first project we will go out will be subsidized. So it's true that this initial phase will be more profitable thanks to subsidies, and we don't have any idea yet of this amount of subsidies, and we need this initial phase to have a good ramp up and to achieve this cost of 1.5 euro per megawatt to be merchant without any subsidies. But clearly, from today until 2025, we'll not be able to make any hydrogen project without subsidies.
So profitability is not there at the moment. If I'm a very talented entrepreneur, Elizabeth, if I want to build a green hydrogen project in Africa, what would be your recommendation? What could I do? Do you see really a chance to go out and to be a first mover in green hydrogen projects in Africa at the moment?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we're already seeing it. I think, you know, I've been monitoring the Q&A and somebody just asked about the effect of EU carbon policies in Africa or in EU effect on Africa and other countries. I think that the world is moving in a very clear and strong direction towards decarbonization. And I think that every day we see, you know, I know that we see every day announcements from countries and private sector actors as well that they are making these 2030, 2050 goals. So the question is, how are we going to meet these goals? And so we need the entrepreneurial approach to decarbonization. You know, we need these many different scales. Of course, IFC operates on quite large scale. That's our, you know, playing field. But there is always space, I think, for smaller scale and entrepreneurial approaches, because we learn so much with each endeavor and each, you know, additional investment and each offtake agreement that we devise or each different stakeholder we engage. You know, there's always a lesson to be learned from that. And I think, you know, we will also, particularly if we do look to do an investment in green hydrogen, in Africa, for example, we will want to speak to these people who have already sort of taken that preliminary risk or have been the first movers. And I think that they are only building, you know, a pretty strong pathway for themselves and wherever they are. So always encourage that. And I think we're trying to sort of use those people to learn as much as we can for our eventual, you know, work there.
Very good. Thank you, Elizabeth. Jack, you have done all this analysis you told us before. You can help companies with the analysis. Do you have for the audience one recommendation, one country where the conditions are ideal for green hydrogen generation today?
I think it's going to be very difficult, Thomas, I think, to give a one data point. I think what I would encourage is any region is going to be looking for capital investment, right? I mean, it means you need to be very, very cost effective in terms of how you produce hydrogen, which means your generation cost has to be viable and at the same time should be attractive to the market. So the bigger question is how attractive is the market in terms of the generation is going to be a big question. From that point of view, I would say that Africa is still not up to the par in terms of where we are seeing. If you look at the bids in Middle East or the bids in India or bids in Southeast Asia, the cost of energy the tariffs are so low, so they're so competitive. So where are we going to be in terms of that cost is going to be significant. Next is the most important aspect is not just doing a solar plant or a wind farm or an offshore wind farm. It's a 24/7 energy production to the particular electrolyzer. I think that's going to be the key. So we have not seen any data points, but if you look at it, what we can do is, okay, to come to a certain data point of what your requirement is for that particular project, what is the combination of wind, solar, energy storage, offshore wind you can have, and is it viable with the kind of transmission network that you have? Is this enough evacuation that is required? That is something that we can do and we can demonstrate to them.
Jack, if I listen to you, a combination of solar, wind, offshore wind, if I was looking at green hydrogen for Africa, I would say, okay, let's wait a bit. Let's see how offshore wind develops in Africa. And then let's make the connection to green hydrogen later. It's very complex, and I completely agree with you. It's about full load hours, the investment into electrolyzers, and combining different renewable energy sources absolutely looks great. From the previous discussion, we have heard about water as an additional point. So it is a very complex environment to build green hydrogen pilots. Am I in a better position right now just to sit back and say, okay, let the others go ahead, because it's so complex and it hasn't been achieved, or these single points have been achieved? Solar, okay, tick mark, yes, that has been achieved. Wind onshore in certain regions, wind offshore, I'm not even sure what the total capacity is in Africa. So do you have some encouraging words for the ones who want to look at green hydrogen generation in Africa?
Yes, there are a lot of encouraging words. I mean, no doubt, Africa's got great potential. There's no second question about that. I mean, offshore wind might not even sometimes might not be feasible probably for Africa, because they might be too far away from where the demand is at the end of the day. Or probably if you're looking at an export market, maybe it makes sense. I think it's too early to call. But what we can say is right now the combination of onshore wind, storage, and solar, I think with heavy backing of solar, if you can run some of the optimization curves to understand the capex cost versus the generation, probably we'll be able to say that we are competitive in the market for sure. But as I said, I'll use the word "but" in a very careful sense. It's like any other continent that is attracting for investment in the region. So you need to do the right things by the policies, by the governments, to ensure that you attract those kind of capital inflow by making sure that these projects can be done at a cost that is conducive to produce hydrogen at a reasonable cost. I think that's the way I would answer your question.
Very good. I have also a little bit of a look at the questions that are incoming from the audience in parallel. Someone is complaining without giving a name. So no one is talking about the offtake markets. Who will pay for this? Okay, offtake markets could be, for example, Europe. There is already quite some demand for gray hydrogen, hydrogen that was produced by fossil fuel that could be replaced. But let's talk about local offtake markets. Damien, do you have an overview? What is going on in Africa? Which industrial processes that are big in Africa actually require hydrogen? Do you see hydrogen investments into hydrogen trains, hydrogen trucks, hydrogen cars, hydrogen ships? Is this a development that we really see starting from Africa? Is there a drag for hydrogen? Is there for the product green hydrogen for local production in Africa? Is this something you observe?
Honestly, for the moment, we don't see so much kind of initiative on our side of this. I think the most important, I would say, issue we will face typically because we are just before discussing about the fact to blind, I would say, some PV plus wind plus hydrogen, and to have something which is the best of the best, because you will have everything green using the best technology at the moment with the lowest cost. And this is something, and in Africa, we will face a huge problem. This is the capacity of the grid for electricity. So typically, wind and solar are now blocking the grids, and we need to stabilize the grids. And you have several ways to stabilize it. You need to make storage, and you have several technologies, I would say, in competition. You have, or you use batteries, or you use diesel, or you will use hydrogen. So I think the best use of hydrogen will be in this environment, because you know that typically storage with batteries, you could only do that a few hours and not so much more. And hydrogen, what is very good, this is something that you can produce. You have a storage during months. And this is where I think you can also stabilize the grid and produce energy, taking finally a good storage with hydrogen. But I would say on the industrial part, I don't know, I don't see so much need for the moment in Africa. As of today, we didn't have any requirement to finance this kind of project.
You mentioned, thank you very much. You mentioned a very good point. So basically, if we think about the green hydrogen economy, is where do we want to be in 2040, 2050, or even 2030? But its business cases are not as attractive today regarding green hydrogen. And you mentioned, this is the point I want to refer to. Battery storage, it's short term. Hydrogen storage is long-term seasonal storage. If in the long run we will build up a hydrogen economy, so let's say it's the only way to fully decarbonize by 2040, 2050, and we will have this hydrogen infrastructure, storage, pipelines, and so on. What does this mean actually for battery infrastructure? Are we not building right now too much battery, or isn't there the risk that we will build up too much battery infrastructure, and parts of it could be taken care of the hydrogen infrastructure that we build up in the second step? So there is fast response applications, probably not the best for hydrogen, but there is also this overlap. And if the only way to fully decarbonize is hydrogen, we will also provide some, let's say, medium term storage capacity to our energy system. Isn't there the risk that the business cases for battery energy storage won't be as good anymore by 2040?
Honestly, I think this is just a question of momentum. At the moment, this is the best solution in terms of pricing. This is the storage with batteries, and typically hydrogen is not competitive enough. To be clear, huh? So you have, I would say, at least 5 years like that, where batteries will be the best solution in terms of clean solution in terms of storage. Then maybe we can talk about hydrogen, and I think normally hydrogen will take the place of batteries. But this is the same question as if you ask me, typically, we will have electric car with batteries or with hydrogen. At the end of the day, we are all thinking that we will have electric cars provided by hydrogen, but it's just a matter of time, and we'll not see it in the coming years, unfortunately.
Okay. Elizabeth, what is your view? Letting the market decide at the moment which infrastructure to build up, because short-term certain business cases look better. Like Damien has explained, for the next 5-6 years, there is no big doubt that from an economical point of view, batteries for energy storage, or for this overlap medium-term energy storage, will be better than hydrogen. On the other hand side, if we look at the energy transition from the perspective of 2050, probably there is no way around hydrogen, and we will have to come up with a certain hydrogen infrastructure. Will the market decide for the best option?
I think that, yeah, I think it's so hard to say from where we are. We just don't have enough data, honestly. But I think, and I think this topic has come up with more frequency in recent weeks and months than it has, at least in my small world. But I think it's really important not to pick and select technologies based on, you know, emotions or feelings or anything like this. I think there is something to be said for the market driving various technologies and where they fit best. I think that, you know, and Chakra made this point, is that every situation will be quite different. You know, the optimal combination of solar, wind, batteries, and hydrogen will vary depending on who's involved, who's buying it, who's using it. So I think it's a bit dangerous to say ahead of time, like, maybe we slow down on energy storage or battery storage because the green hydrogen might pay off better in the long run. I think at this point, and also this comes from a sense of urgency to just make progress and act as soon as possible, because we really need to do much more to stay below 1.5 degrees. So, I mean, my motivation is always what will decarbonize the fastest and the most effectively. And if it's batteries today and it's green hydrogen tomorrow in one region or for one application, then I think that's great. But yeah, I think it's impossible to pick and choose. We can speculate as much as we want, but I'll be biting my tongue in 5 years if I make the wrong choice. So the risk of skirting the question, I think that everything varies.
Yeah, excellent. I'm still looking at the questions from the audience. So the local takeoff or the local markets are a major point. And there is one aspect that is addressed, actually, ammonia and fertilizers. Who on the panel, Chuck, are you the right one on the panel to address this point? What about Morocco and green hydrogen for ammonia and fertilizer production? So Morocco as a background is big in fertilizers.
So I'll not go into the details of country specific, but that's what we call as blue hydrogen economy at the end of the day. So I think one thing that we might need support from the organizations like IFC and others is, can we make these projects bankable, right? That's the whole point at the end of the day. So if you're going to use for production of fertilizers, production of something else, it's a good to have, but the question is it bankable? Do you have enough, like, can we have corporate off-taker, something of that nature that we can work with? I think these are the things that we need to work on. I think that will make it interesting to see how people perceive. I think the biggest question for me personally is the off-taker risk, wherever it is at the end of the day, where are we going to use it? Is it going to be corporates that are going to use it? The industrial houses are going to use it? I think that's going to be the key, because if you look at how the renewable energy market came to this fruition, is because there was a strong off-taker, utilities that were having strong contractual agreements that helped to drive down those costs and spread the risk from 15 years to 20 years to 25 years. Now the question is, how are we going to do it in the blue hydrogen economy? Is there any scope for that? I think probably there is, but I think that's a model that will evolve over a period of time. So there is nothing that stops that. Only we can look at it only from green hydrogen point of view. You can also look at through the blue hydrogen prism as well.
So blue hydrogen already is a reality, or might be, for in some opinions, more a reality today. What about replacing gray hydrogen actually with green hydrogen? So there is a global demand, or hydrogen kind of, it can be transported in big tanker ships. So there is a global market, a little bit like gas, a little bit like oil. So there is also this approach that maybe demand is not as important if you are in off-grid applications. If you want to supply electricity to a mine, of course, it is incredibly important to have a contract with the mine. If not, you would not build a solar power plant next to a mine site. I think here we have some liquidity in the market. As soon as we get a price point of this $1.5 euros, whatever per kilogram. And before, there might be a certain bonus, an extra, if you if companies can use in their corporate communication to replace gray, or maybe in the future also blue hydrogen by green hydrogen. Is my thinking right or wrong, that as soon as we really come down with prices to 1.5 kilograms, so if we match the price of gray hydrogen, actually all these offtake agreements are not as important anymore because it is a global world market?
Yes, exactly, Thomas. Just to answer your question on that, this is typically the bet of ideal. It's just to say that today you have a huge volume of possibility to substitute gray hydrogen to green hydrogen, but the person who takes the decision, or are the industrials, will make it only if we achieve this price. Otherwise, they didn't care about. They will not pay more to have green hydrogen. They don't care. The only thing you can add, maybe, is you can evaluate the carbon price. If you evaluate, and the industrial are aware and can assess this valuation of carbon price, so you can use on that. But if you are not competitive with gray hydrogen, you will not have any change of the market.
What are indications, carbon prices of today? So how much cents per kilowatt would be the carbon price? Just to give an idea, it's probably not very much anyhow at today's carbon prices.
The good news is the carbon price is increasing. So this is the good news, and we may think that it could achieve in the coming years the equivalent on 0.5 euro per kilo at the maximum level. So it's between something between 0.1 and 0.5.
Okay. Great. Let me have a look at the questions from the audience. What are the most? Okay, there are quite some comments. Replacing gray hydrogen with green is really waste. Let's not dive too much into this topic. Fertilizer production comes up again and again.
I can hop in. There was one, I answered it by typing, but if there are any hydrogen strategies in the Africa region, I think Morocco is preparing theirs. And I know that some of my colleagues at the World Bank are involved in that and developing their hydrogen strategy. South Africa is doing pilot and demonstration projects. So we're also working with them. And then I believe there's also discussion, or very early discussions with Namibia on their hydrogen strategy. So in the Africa region, there's just a couple, but we're hoping to see more. But as far as where the bank is working on this, South America is also a pretty hot location. Chile, Argentina, we're seeing a lot of activity there too. So hopefully more in the coming months. So it's a great sign that we're getting approached by these governments to help them support their pathways.
Excellent. So you were highlighting many countries around the world are coming up with hydrogen or green hydrogen strategies. Morocco also, but will the other countries in Africa lose a little bit track? Will they be behind, or are these hydrogen strategies, for example, in Germany or in France, in Chile, the ones you refer to, will they be an enabler for green hydrogen generation in Africa? So are they good for Africa? if they don't come up with their own strategy, or would you say they are bad?
I think they're good. I think the reason for that is that it will only help inform their country strategies. I mean, when you have an idea of who will buy it, and this kind of goes to the offtake agreement or the offtake discussion, is that if you know that, you know, Spain is going to need X amount of green hydrogen in 10 years, you can really, you know, Morocco can use that to devise its own strategy and say, well, we can probably contribute X amount and export there. And then like, how much more can we do to Portugal? How much can we benefit from the infrastructure that will be built out? So if you're looking from the export perspective, absolutely. I think that that's a no-brainer. It's kind of like you map and sort of use that to inform your work. But I think it's also important to think about how Africa is going to build its own ecosystem and its own hydrogen consumption. I mean, and I wouldn't want to pigeonhole this to green hydrogen by any means, because the energy demand in the region is only going to grow, you know, immensely in the coming years. So I think it's also essential not just to think about green hydrogen in terms of who will use it in Europe, but how it can be consumed in the actual region. So as the, you know, as populations grow, as these mega cities develop, which I know Vincent mentioned, how can we make sort of municipal plans or state level plans at the local level to identify growing ecosystems in that perspective? So don't just, I guess, don't put all your eggs in the European basket, but definitely use it to learn from and explore replications that you could do potentially in the region.
Great. I see a question in the chat, not really in the F&As, that is about transportation of hydrogen. Damien, what would you think? What is the main way of transporting hydrogen? Even if Elizabeth right now said, let's not focus too much on Europe as an offtake market for green hydrogen that is produced in Africa. But would you see rather larger pipelines for the future, or tanker ships to transport hydrogen or for exporting hydrogen from Africa?
Typically, you will not, if I'm just coming back to economics basis, sorry, but if you want to reach 1.5 euro per kilo, you will not make it with tanks as transportation. It's impossible. It will be too expensive. So the only way, the only way to have a competitive price is to have a pipeline. So typically, if you use existing pipeline of gas, you can put until like 20%, I would say, of hydrogen into this pipeline. But we know that typically we will have to build a new pipeline for that, for the example of Europe. So as you don't have so much pipeline of gas in Africa, you have to build this pipeline. So then it's a choice to make, to say, okay, do I use hydrogen for big scale? In that case, I need to build a pipeline, and Africa needs to think about what will be the pipeline of gas of hydrogen for Africa, and build these lines. Or you use it for electromobility, and like that you can use tanks. But in any case, you will have a differentiation of pricing between both.
Thank you, Damien. Chuck, you want to add something?
I think this is going to be a highly competitive market. I think let's be very clear. Everybody would like to get the lowest cost of hydrogen in terms of how they are going to contractually sign, right? So everybody will be competing to the space. So we have to look at it where the cost of production might be much cheaper, and probably a transportation cost might be higher, but overall cost might be lower. So I think we need to be careful in evaluating how the countries start building up their infrastructure. So they need to understand and have these agreements in place in the next coming years that at these prices you should have a tie-up, because if they start going to the auction market, I mean, think about it, what would happen? Everybody would be competing with each other, and where would be is going to be a difficult question. So fundamentally, what I'm saying is, I think the countries have to relook at and have tie-ups and understand the relationships they have in terms of the off-taker. I mean, one thing is for local, and one is what we call global. So which is basically global plus local. So I think that is going to be significant in how we approach the hydrogen strategy for the countries. If they are only looking for their domestic consumption, it's a completely different ballgame. If they are looking for an export market, it's a totally different ballgame. The one concern that I want to bring it up, I think, which is important, I think countries that have had huge penetration of renewables will definitely have an added advantage in this space because they understand the technology is better. They understand, what are the risks that we see in terms of their production. So probably they might be at a little bit of an early stage start. So I think people can catch up, but I would say because of their volume and the kind of work they have done in the past few years and the inception of energy storage coming into play, they are a little bit of a head start. So I think Africa as a region has to take that into stride and work a collective roadmap as how they would like to pursue the hydrogen strategy.
Okay, great, Jack. One more question which comes from the audience. Maybe you're the right person to refer to also, Jack. Water. I think we had it yesterday. We had it already in the keynote today. So per kilogram of hydrogen that is produced, we need 9 liters of water. This sounds a lot, but actually taking into account that you can drive a car 100 kilometers with 1 kilogram of water, probably it is not that much. But nevertheless, we need water. And the question is that land in coastal areas is expensive in Africa. So access to water, what solutions are there in the market to provide the water to come up with clean water that is used in hydrogen processes?
So that's a big question, right? It's what I call it's the holy grail of the big question. I mean, what is more important is the question is, can we combine the economics of desalination with respect to the producing the water with hydrogen and have this complete cycle completed? I think that's going to be critical. But I would say right now we are in very early stage. I think the cost to benefit of understanding whether the water can be used right now to produce hydrogen, or does it make economic sense? Because our water is also becoming a very scarce resource in some parts of the region. So that needs to be debated. I think that's a bigger question. But what I strongly believe is, as the cost keeps coming down, look at the cost of hydrogen for the desalination plants too. I mean, think about it as what would it mean for actually production of water in regions where it's quite arid in nature. So that's going to be very, very critical. So I would leave it there, but there is no, one answer that fits this kind of a question. So yeah.
Okay, I think we are almost coming to an end. My last question would be, and to everyone on the panel, we have quite some big oil and gas companies that are already active in Africa. I'm referring to the Shells, Totals on the continent. So they are active in oil production in, for example, in Nigeria, in Kenya. We have the oil and gas companies. They are more and more turning towards renewables, and hydrogen is a strategic option for them. What do you think? Who will dominate? Who will be the key player in the African hydrogen market? Will it be rather small startups, or do you think that these huge oil and gas giants will make the market for hydrogen in Africa? Elizabeth, what do you think?
It's such a good question. I wish I could tell the future, but I think that there will be an opportunity. Okay, the way that I would think about this and answer it is sort of like the opportunity is immense. I think we can all agree on that, whether you think of it from the renewables and the potential to achieve low cost renewable energy specifically, and that being a key component in green hydrogen production. So the more that we're seeing these big majors invest in renewable energy technologies and production, and sort of, in many cases transfer themselves to being renewable energy companies and sort of rebranding, the more that we'll see them looking to the Africa region, particularly the coastal areas. I think for offshore wind, at least, we can see that very early happening. I think that there's a big opportunity for both green hydrogen and offshore wind together. But that said, I think that those that understand the local context will benefit at the same time, have an opportunity to benefit potentially more. That could be, I don't know if small startups is the right way to think about it, but basically I think that any company or any stakeholder that understands the complexity of the local market or the regional markets is going to have a leg up. So I think that perspective is going to be important. It's just knowing who has the knowledge and the experience, because the existing, infrastructure in each country is so different. And I think understanding the power markets in each one is also quite complicated. So the more local expertise you have, that will add to your checklist.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Damien, what do you think? Big
on
oil
that,
and
I
gas
think,
companies, will they play a
yeah,
major role?
my vision on that is that, for kind of, electromobility, you will have startup and I would say small and mid-sized companies working on that, because it's a huge market and you need to have to be a flexible company. But when you are talking about building some pipeline for hydrogen, if it's a choice, it will be for biggest companies or for oil and gas company, which is this is their first job to do that. So I think you will have both for two kind of markets.
Okay, check. It's always difficult to answer these questions if you're the last one. So probably everything has been said. What is your view on this question?
I think I'll echo what both Elizabeth and Damien has said. I think from the technology point of view, I think you'll see a lot of startups coming up. I think from the project's point of view, I think since they are very capital intensive, because of the fact that they have a lot of balance sheet that is available and the capital that they have, it's much easier for them to scale up. I think that's the reason you will see a much larger, bigger, oil and gas companies playing a major role on that side. But on the technology side, I strongly believe that there'll be a lot of companies that will be vying up with these kind of startups.
Great. Sorry, I'm not being a good German. Our time is already over for 2 minutes. Elizabeth, Damien, and Chuck, thank you very much for this discussion. I hand over to John and hope to see you in the future and to see many interesting green hydrogen projects on the map of Africa.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you very much. See you. Bye.
Thank you, Thomas, and thanks to everybody for the candid discussion. You've been amazing panelists, like really multitasking, answering tough questions, answering questions on the chat, on the Q&A. Really amazing panel. Thank you so much.